All right, good evening, everyone. I hope you can hear me.
You're good,
Welcome to,
Adam.
thank you, Jerry. Welcome to tonight's web meeting of the Multi-State Freight Working Group. This is a working group of the Metropolitan Area Planning Forum known as the MAP Forum. The MAP Forum is a consortium of 10 metropolitan planning organizations and councils of government stretching from eastern Pennsylvania to the capital region in Connecticut. It was formed to improve regional transportation planning and coordination in the New York City metropolitan region. Today's meeting is a workshop devoted to the public launch of the Regional Waste Movement Study. This is a multi-state study funded through the New York Metropolitan Transportation Council, but including all the MAP Forum member organizations. It is a regional study of needs and opportunities associated with the movement of municipal solid waste and construction and demolition debris. With the closure of regional landfills, the transportation of waste to locations outside of the multi-state region will be challenging, even with reductions in waste production due to higher recycling rates and other efforts. The optimal use of truck, rail, and water modes to accomplish these moves and the placement of supporting facilities and infrastructure are important region-wide transportation issues. Various agencies and transportation carriers have studied this issue extensively, and this effort will build on this work and identify multimodal transportation opportunities for waste movement at a regional level. We will open today's session with an overview presentation of the study, followed by a roundtable discussion of various perspectives on waste movement in the region. We will then move into an interactive session using polling software to begin to collect impressions on the topic from stakeholders and the interested public who have joined us tonight. Before I turn this over to the presenters, I realize I forgot to introduce myself. I'll turn on my camera very briefly. So you can see, my name is Adam Levine. I am the Executive Director of the New York Metropolitan Transportation Council. Sorry, it's been a bit of a crazy evening. And I will turn it over and turn off the camera because you certainly don't need to see me. There's a lot more interesting things to see and hear in the coming.
Okay, thank you, Adam. Can you hear me okay?
I'm sorry, I muted myself, Jerry, before I could introduce you. Jerry
Okay.
Bogas is NYMTC's project manager for this study and also deputy director of NYMTC, and Tyler Oates, who heads the supporting team from the Rutgers Center for Advanced Infrastructure and Transportation. Gentlemen, you're up. Thank you.
Thank you, Adam. Good evening, everyone. We're going to be doing a quick presentation on the study so you get a sense of the scope of what we're trying to accomplish. And then we'll be getting into an interactive exercise for you to provide input. At any time during this, if you want to put information into the chat pod, we are recording this entire event and we'll be looking at everything. All your input into the interactive sessions, as well as anything you put in the chat pod as input into this study effort. This is actually the second of two workshops we've held. The first in the evening, we held one back at the beginning of November. At the beginning of the study now to collect public ideas, issues, concerns, and solutions. And we had a rich feedback in the first session. We hope to have the same tonight. Having said that, I want to move forward now. So what we'll cover is, again, study context. Tyler will introduce the study team. We'll do an overview, talk a little bit about challenges and milestones, today's goals, and there'll be time for questions. And is everyone hearing me? I'm seeing some chats saying people are not hearing.
I hear you fine, Jerry.
Okay, great. Study context. So this particular effort was recommended in the freight element of NYMTC's regional transportation plan, but it is an effort that, as Adam pointed out, includes 10 organizations in a wide multi-state metropolitan region. So with changes in waste disposal, transportation of municipal solid waste and construction demolition debris becomes even more challenging and has more of an impact on the transportation system. And despite reductions and attempted reductions in waste production due to higher recycling rates, still efforts are needed to deal with transportation of these wastes and do so as efficiently as possible. So the optimal use of truck, rail, and water modes to accomplish these moves and the placement of supporting facilities and infrastructure are important region-wide transportation issues. And we understand that this also bleeds over into the whole area of waste management, waste reduction and so forth. We are focused on waste movement here, but obviously those other issues are important to the study also. So the study will build on work that's already been accomplished by a number of parties throughout the region, but we're going to build on that and then hopefully identify multimodal transportation opportunities for waste movement, efficient waste movement at a regional level. This is the study area we'll be looking at. Again, these are 10 constituent metropolitan planning organizations and councils of government stretching from eastern Pennsylvania all the way through to the capital region of Connecticut. This area is obviously an important economic area in the country, and traffic and transportation are critical issues across this region, as well as waste movement and waste management in general. So the project leadership, you heard from Adam Levine, Executive Director of NYMTC. I am the project manager. Mike Kiumi from my staff is the Deputy Project Manager, and Leslie Forger is the Freight Coordinator from NYMTC staff. He'll be assisting also. I want to turn over now to Tyler Oates from Rutgers Kate, and he'll introduce the team on his side. Right, Tyler?
Hi, thanks, Jerry. It's a pleasure to be here with everyone this evening. Like Jerry and Adam have mentioned, my name is Tyler Oates. I'm an assistant professor at Rutgers in the Civil and Environmental Engineering Department. I'm affiliated with the Rutgers Center for Advanced Infrastructure and Transportation, and we've put together a team of both industry and academics who have a large amount of experience looking at both the waste movement as well as the planning related to waste movement. And to that end, we've partnered with eConsult Solutions, ESI, out of and working with Dick Voigt and David Stanek, a couple of their principals and directors, as well as we've partnered with Ramble, both with some of their local experts, Nestor and Jose, as well as some of their international experts who have really focused on waste movement in other countries, as well as doing these big multi-area investigations. As well as our final partner is Dr. Catherine Lawson out of SUNY Albany, and she is an expert looking at freight as well as the visualization and kind of the understanding of waste movement from a visual and data management perspective. With that, I just want to kind of transition now and talk a little bit about the study scope. There's really 8 distinct tasks here, but the way we view it is there's really 2 core things. The first is kind of gathering and engaging the public, so that way we can engage all of the data. And then we're going to be having a forecasting portion. To that end, we've got a few different tasks outlined from the outreach and engagement, including tonight. We've started to advise study participants of what's going on, and we're starting to support the local outreach, as well as we are about to launch an outreach program where we're looking to engage both public and private sector agencies, waste collectors, as well as other interested public. This is going to be taken in the form of an online survey, as well as some targeted interactions with other people. So we will be announcing that forthcoming, and we'll be looking out for feedback. And this is really focused on the data management and data identification. Additionally, we're also going to be performing a series of interviews where we are going to be interviewing different MPO or COG staff, member agencies, non-member agencies. And what we're really looking for here is looking for experts who can help us in the MapForum region identify relevant plans, related sections of plans, programs, and studies. One of the critical parts of this is really we need to have as much data as possible, so that way we really understand how waste is currently being moved, the legislation, as well as the other programs and studies that are going to be really influencing how waste is going to be moved in the future. And this is critical, especially as we start thinking about the multimodal side of things and looking at how is it occurring now, and how are different transportation and other policies going to impact this in the future. So simultaneously, we are also undergoing a large data gathering where we're both reviewing and synthesizing all of these waste-related plans, programs, and other studies in the study area, as well as we're doing a deep dive into ongoing and active relevant federal, state, and local legislature. And this is really what we're looking for, is gathering all of the information that's out there so we can get a really holistic understanding of what is happening, so then we can really start to parse our ongoing forecasting work. From there, we are also currently working on documenting and visualizing all of the waste movement systems in districts, disposal and receiving sites, as well as different transload facilities and yards to an interactive map. And again, this is really going to help us with the visualization side of things. It's one thing to have the data and where it is, but another more important side of it is, can we actually understand what that means, and how can we identify different points of concern, so that way we can both provide suggestions as well as highlight these difficult areas and then work to find movement solutions in the future. These first 5 tasks really are the brunt of our data gathering. This is a significant portion of the ongoing project, and this is really setting us up for tasks 6 and 7 of our scope. The first is we're going to be preparing forecasts for waste facility capacity and usage for the years 2035 and 2050. I'll talk a little bit more about the granularity that we're hoping to be able to operate at when we start talking about some of the challenges and why we're here today and what the sort of information we're looking for and trying to gather. From there, those forecasts as well as the data we've gathered is really going to help us prepare forecasts both for waste stream volumes and movements by mode. This is important. We're going to be looking at all the different modes that are there for the years 2035 and 2050. And we want to make sure we're incorporating all the different policies as well as different technological advances that are forthcoming, looking at different ideas such as carbon reduction and waste stream reduction policies from there. And finally, this will all be synthesized into a final public report that will highlight not only all of the work that was done in here, but also looking at some of the potential opportunities and recommendations. And so kind of want to touch briefly here on the proposed study schedule. We've been developing a lot of our outreach programs and interview processes, and now we're really getting into the brunt of our launch of these different outreach. So we are currently in December. This project is scheduled to be finished by the end of next November. Right now, we are about to start launching and interacting with our interview portion, as well as launching this outreach program. We are ongoing and actively involved in our data gathering for tasks 4 and 5, looking at the literature review and the existing conditions. And we're really starting to get a good understanding of what's there and where some data gaps might be, which is now going to be used to feed our interviews and outreach programs. Our forecasting is scheduled to begin sometime in February and should be completed sometime mid to late summer of this coming year. And as I mentioned, we'll be hoping to be done by end of next November. Now, I spoke a little bit about some of the potential challenges, and this is really critical from a data perspective. And we really need to understand what data is there, because the core assumption to holistically do a forecast like this is that the data exists in different plans and programs to complete the project successfully. Without this data, we can really start to have different gaps or different potential uncertainties that propagate throughout our forecast. And this includes things such as incomplete coverage, where we have enough information for 90% of the region, but if we have a gap in 10% and we don't know how waste moves through that area, then we have to start making assumptions, and that just propagates an uncertainty down the line. As well as we may have insufficient data where we have data from all the area, but it's just not quite enough to do the quality of forecasting that we need. As well as there's always the old adage of what is the unhelpful data, where we have tons of data and how do we parse down to the data that's actually going to help with the forecast. And this is really going to help the amount of data we can find. Again, this is what we're looking for in our public outreach and all of our different outreach programs, is what data is there and where can we find all the data that we need, because that's really going to feed the geographic or jurisdictional granularity for the study. The forecast is only going to be as good as we can find good data at a more granular level. So in order to get down into the township level, we need to have information that is related to the townships across the study area. And then as well, we need to be aware of just the different political and jurisdictional challenges. We are not necessarily going to be finding solution for any of, as Jerry mentioned, for any of the management or questions that are there, but certainly those policies and information that is being talked about and discussed on a daily basis, that's going to influence how movement's going to occur in the future, and where you need to be cognizant and aware, as well as kind of continually be listening and outreaching to different people to be aware of these side of things. From this, we've identified different ways that we're going to go about addressing this to improve our granularity and ability to do these analysis, things such as different thresholds of feasibility, developing different minimum data to complete the final output at desired geographies, identifying what the gold standard for highest output is, as well as starting to develop, moving forward, what are some of the future better practices that can be not imposed, but kind of that can be taken under by different stakeholders that can allow for better or improve forecasting in the future. As well as we're going to divide our interview phase into our interview process into 2 phases. This is going to allow us to identify gaps during an initial phase and then target those gaps in that second phase to really be to identify areas where we are lacking in data or we need further work in that data, as well as doing multiple stages of public and stakeholder outreach. So we are going to be constantly recirculating back through our stakeholders, talking, discussing, and identifying different gaps and engaging with the public and those stakeholders as we find these gaps in our data. Finally, just briefly, I want to talk about some of the key milestones. We're going to be completing the study materials and interviews sometime in the early 2024. From there, we'll be completing the regulatory and legislation reviews. That will be occurring alongside the completion of the interviews, the publication of an interactive map, as well as the completion of our forecast and the publication of the report as we get into the late 2024 timeline. And I just finally, some of today's goals. First off, I wanted to introduce the study to the stakeholders and the interested public. And we want to begin the process of gathering input on both the perspective, issues, policies, and priorities. We are looking for information across the board. As Jerry mentioned, this is being recorded and we're gathering all the data, and my team is going to start reviewing this data the moment they have it. And from there, we want to identify all these different perspectives as well as the interested stakeholders. That way we can really, as I mentioned, get a holistic understanding of what is really driving waste movement in the map forum region. And with that, I will turn it back to you, Jerry.
Great, thank you, Tyler. Again, we want to spend time interacting with the folks who are with us tonight as opposed to this overview. So we hopefully it was short and concise, but it gave you a flavor of what we're trying to accomplish through this study. At this point, I'm going to ask Stephanie to share her screen so we can get into the interactive exercises. And Stephanie, if you would unmute yourself, we can hear from you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Stephanie Brooks. I am going to be sharing our poll, our interactive poll for this meeting, and we'll also be taking any answers people have in the chat. So feel free to keep active on the chat. Let me just make sure everyone can see my screen. Is it working, Jerry?
Yes, you're good, Stephanie.
Great, excellent. Okay, so this is the interactive portion of our meeting where we really want to hear from you. So these poll exercises will be requiring you to use your browser or your cell phone. And I'll provide instructions as we go along. We just want to definitely, you can always use the chat phone as the chat module as well, if for some reason the poll isn't coming through. So we'll start off with just very general polling information. How Poll Everywhere works is you want to visit this link. I'm going to put it in the chat, pollev.com/sbrooks005. That is our poll link. And if you click that and WebEx asks you to go to an additional browser, like a security question, you can say yes. It's okay to say yes and have that go to a different screen. Or you can always use your smartphone and text to the letters 22333. I think we need to have somebody on mute. There's some background noise. And then type in sbrooks005, just as you see on the screen here. And if people are having trouble, feel free to unmute and I can walk you through if you have any issues. But you should see a screen when you start. I'm sorry, I just need to mute. Let's see if I can mute someone here. It's just there's some distraction noise. Additionally, if we have people who cannot get that link from the chat, let me know and we'll try to find another way to get the link to you, or you can just type it in by hand in your browser. That would be https://pollev.com/sbrooks005. So I just want to check if people are getting in. Thumbs up if people are able to get in, or are there any difficulties? Seems like people are getting in. All right, well, I'm going to move forward since I haven't heard from anybody. Our first exercise is just going to be some general information. We just want to know where you're joining us from. So I'm sharing my screen right now, and there's some fantastic results we're already getting. Where are you participating from? We're seeing a good representation. We've got Connecticut, we've got Long Island, we've got the 5 boroughs. People can keep adding their data, which is very exciting. If anybody is having any issues, let me know.
Yes, and if the map doesn't extend to anywhere where people are, we apologize for that.
Yes, we're sorry. You could type in the message for from the chat. It says, I am not in any of the areas shown. You can type in that location in the chat so we can get a sense of where you're coming from. If you're calling from outside of these counties. I see someone has moved themselves a little further east in Connecticut. That's great. That's totally fine to get a sense of where you're coming from. Washington County, New York. All right. Thank you very much. Okay, give this another couple of minutes. And Southeast Connecticut Council of Governments in Norwich. Great. Thank you very much. And we'll give this just a couple more minutes as people get familiar with the application. I'm not here seeing any tech issues, so I think everything is going well so far.
Hello, my name is Georgette, and I'm calling from Eastern Long Island from the Brookhaven NAACP. I'm having a little bit of trouble, so I'm still working on trying.
Sure, take your time, And it's good to know where you're calling from. So you can always put that in the chat as well. So we just have a record of where you're coming from. And I see some folks have put their locations in their name. Okay, great, thank you very much. Okay, I think we'll move on to the next question so we don't run out of time. Our next question is, what organization or community do you represent? If you are just here representing yourself, please feel free to just say that. But if you do represent a particular community that you'd like to identify with, please let us know. We've got some folks have put things in the chat already. I'm seeing Southeastern Connecticut Council of Governments. That's great. City College, wonderful. There are other locations where people would like to identify from. Zero Waste Ithaca, wonderful. I'm sorry, you're off the map. I apologize. But thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it. Excellent. Wonderful. Saratoga, Washington, Warren counties. This is great. We're getting people from all over the state. This is fantastic. Thank you. Wonderful. Beyond Plastics Queens, Brooklyn Solid Waste. We've got the Bronx. That's where I am too. Well, hello. Very nice to see all this feedback. Thank you so much. Westcog, excellent. Thank you. And I'm going to move to the next question. You can always put more in the chat if you didn't have a chance to answer. We just don't want to run out of time. The next question is, what top of mind concerns do you have on the topic of tonight's workshop? What brought you here? What is the thing that's really important to you? You can list more than one thing. Just let us know. But what are you thinking about tonight? What are you concerned about? What do you hope to get out of this workshop? Whatever answer you feel like you would like to give about your top of mind concern. Okay, movement of solid waste will become more difficult and expensive. That's a definite. Thank you. All right, environmental justice, very important. Inclusion of low-tech solutions like aerobic composting. Connecticut shipping out of state, impacts on roads, multimodal connectivity, pollution, freight flows. Okay, thank you. We always get such great feedback on these polls. Really appreciate you all participating. And in the chat, we see efforts to use the federal STB. I'm not sure what that is, but to bypass local zoning and local communities. So chemicals, safely moving solid waste, minimizing environmental impacts, changing business as usual. Okay. Overburden of communities of color with waste facilities. Thank you very much. All right, this is great. All of these chat comments are also going to be recorded along with the polls. Right, I think we will. Okay, New York City waste to rural upstate. Okay, small town or areas, sewage, sludge. Thank you. I've seen a lot of environmental justice. This is great. Thank you very much. I'm going to move on to the next question. So again, so that we don't run out of time. All right, so our next subject, now we've sort of done more very general introductory questions. This is about the impacts of waste. Some of you already mentioned some of these things already, but our first more detailed question is focusing on municipal solid waste and construction and demolition debris. What aspects of these waste streams most impact your family, your community, your organization? We saw some things about toxic air, pollution. What are the biggest impacts to your community, your family, or organization? You can always put the answer in the chat as well, or both. You can always do both. All right, trucking needs cost, microplastic shedding, yeah. Traffic, air quality, street safety, site waste vehicles, vulnerable road users, right? Water pollution. Georgette is not hearing anything. Is my volume, can people hear me? Is my volume all right?
You're good from here, Stephanie.
I'm not muted, Georgette. I'm sorry if you can't hear anything. We'll try to troubleshoot for you. Sometimes WebEx asks you to select, you could change your audio source potentially, that might help. Okay, I think we're getting good amount of answers here. We'll go to, oh, here we go, hazardous dust and debris. Yeah, definitely. Waste spillage, odors, blow off from rail cars, waste, noise, and emissions. And then in the chat, we have toxic contamination of the air and increased illnesses, right? Definitely an impact. Georgette, we'll try to troubleshoot your audio. Sorry that you can't hear.
I'm going to try to chat with Georgette
Thank you.
because she can't hear
Okay.
what you're saying, obviously.
Okay. Just let her know. I will. Right. Accidents involving contaminants, missed opportunity to pursue zero waste strategies. Okay. Oh, wow. Warren County has highest cancer rates in New York State. Okay. Waste and transportation companies externalizing actual costs. Okay. I'm going to move on to the next question. We've got some great feedback. Again, you can always put things in the chat as well. Oh, and thank you. An additional participant, NAACP Mastic Beach. Thank you for being here. All right, so this is a just your own organizational disposal arrangement. Select all that apply. So do you have your bag and move your trash to a central location, scheduled drop-offs, trash to the or can to the street or curbside or alley container? Just let us know your own personal home or organizational disposal arrangements. Got one. Thank you, Georgia, for putting in the chat. I apologize you couldn't hear, but she put overburden on emergency services that are 100% volunteer. Okay, she put on captions. Excellent. We'll have a couple of more minutes to get some answers here.
Stephanie, Stephanie, just so you know, I've been able to communicate with Georgette.
Excellent. Thank you, Jerry.
Seems to be hearing now, so.
Okay, good. Wonderful. Hi, George. Thank you very much. So it looks like the dominant is bagging and moving trash bins or cans to the street. And then by second is other arrangements. Interesting. And then also bag and move trash to a central disposal location tends to be the most popular. Georgette called in. Thank you. Residents can, we have one more, another arrangement in the chat. Residents can bring waste for disposal and also recyclable separated by type to a public transfer station. Okay. I'm going to give this one more minute and then we'll move on to our next question. There is an open letter to Pennsylvania legislators too. Thank you. All right, we'll move on to the next question. What local, state, or federal waste policies and or regulations most impact your family, your community, and organization? You've mentioned a few of these before, but if you want to get more specific, policies or regulations that impact you or your organization or your community, we did hear, quite a bit about environmental justice, and there's a big comment in the chat. State should limit siting of waste facilities. Communities of color have been overburdened by these types of facilities historically. And then advice about seeking a permit and better ways to require that they identify alternative sites. Thank you. Just put all this in, record this. All right, we're seeing some feedback coming in. DEC limiting and controlling transfer of waste has cost implications. Site-by-site permitting of transfer stations without regard for transportation.
Stephanie, your volume just went down.
Okay. We've got, is that a little better? I just turned it up.
Yes.
Is that better? Okay, excellent. We've got 3 responses here. I'm going to give this another couple of minutes to give people a chance to type in more responses, more details. Organics recycling and permitting too cumbersome. That's a comment came in the poll.
In the chat pod, we have the Surface Transportation Board waiving local zoning regulations.
Yep. And then state permits that in the chat, state permits that allow corporations to landfill waste and to own and manage incinerators. There is no enforcement of state requirement of recycling or source separation. Thank you very much. Keep putting things in the chat. You can keep putting things in this poll. We're here seeing more responses here. Need clear public policy to increase recycling and reduce solid waste streams. Over reliance on moving waste to other locations keeps issues out of sight and out of mind. Moving out one burden onto another. Thank you very much, everyone. This is great feedback. This is exactly the kind of feedback we're looking for. So I think we'll give it another 30 seconds so we don't run out of time here. A lot of questions to ask. We want to get even more specific. Another comment, New York State is hugely behind as far as keeping food waste out of landfills, far behind Vermont and California, for example. Thank you. And then another investors, including foreign investors, are profiting from lax U.S. and state regulations over in-use locomotive emissions and standards for waste transfer station. Playing devil's advocate, our burden can be someone else's needed revenue. Okay, thank you. All right, I think we'll get another question. Why are these projects always located in minority neighborhoods? Thank you for that. We're getting some good EJ feedback here. Climate goals like Plan NYC. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next question. This is about, we just saw a bunch of links in the chat, an open letter to Pennsylvania legislators on regulating locomotive pollution, the cost of doing nothing. There's some interesting links in the chat if anyone would like to take a look at them.
Well, the team certainly will.
Thank you very much. We definitely have this recorded, so we'll definitely take a look at these. Our next section is about waste disposal and movement. So it's just a very general question. Do you know who your waste collector is at your home or at your organization? %, say yes. We'll give it a couple more minutes. Anyone doesn't, that's fine too. Or if you feel free to type in also, we'll be asking who that is later on. So you don't need to worry about putting that in yet. Looks like everyone knows. That's great. So we'll move on to, home, yes, work, no. Okay. Thank you. All right, we'll go on to the next question. If you answered yes, who is your waste collector? So if you can just go ahead and type that in either into the poll or into the chat, so we can record that. Just getting a sense of what type of waste collectors people are working with, what they use, what they're familiar with. A lot of DSNY. Okay. Self-collection of food scraps for composting. DSNY, it's Department of Sanitation. No idea. That makes sense. Okay, thank you for the response in the chat. Bringing their own waste to a publicly owned facility, town contractors. There's a lot of different ways that waste gets moved. Self-organics drop-off, municipal village. There's the city of Bridgeport, city collection for trash. Thank you all. This is great feedback. And we see there's a variety of different ways that waste is collected, not just DSNY. There's a lot of different private contractors and municipal agencies. And thank you everyone for responding. We'll give it another 30 seconds. Right, we will move on to the next question, which is what facilities are most relevant to waste disposal in your community or your organization? By facilities, we mean the locations for gathering waste for either incineration, burial, long-term storage, or transfer, conveyed someplace else. What are most relevant to disposing your waste? Well, there's a comment here. Our zero waste group accepts residential food scraps at a farmer's market. Farmers take them back to their farms to compost. Excellent. Thank you.
Stephanie, just want to point out that this question is very important for us to learn the lay of the land in terms of where the different facilities are. We were gathering information from a number of sources, but these public meetings have been very helpful in pointing that out to us.
Thank you, Jerry. So again, if you can give us this feedback, again, it is going to be important. So we're hearing here that there's reuse centers. In city of Bridgeport, trash is incinerated, food scraps not adequately separated or composted. Transfer stations to collect solid waste and export to Western New York. Transfer stations to the barge at 59th Street, right? Specialty waste events by the Department of Sanitation. Keep them coming. This is all very, very interesting information. Sunny Farm Landfill in Ohio, where much of the waste goes from Long Island. Wow, did not know that. Ohio. Because depend on WT trash incinerators, landfill in Ohio and Indiana as well. Wow. I learned something new today. Thank you, guys. This is all very interesting stuff. This is exactly the feedback we're looking for. Thank you. Okay, I'm going to give it another minute here. Okay, there's a comment from the chat. I don't think any New York City waste goes to these facilities in my area. There's an aging trash incinerator on the Hudson River, landfill in Saratoga County, other areas in Washington County. Comments from up here, the Newtown Creek wastewater treatment plant, several in Ohio, Pennsylvania, and New York. Connecticut. In Connecticut, one large anaerobic digester for food scraps. Digestate disposal is an issue. Thank you. And there's another comment about food scraps being anaerobically digested. And again, another comment through the chat, town transfer stations in Warren County. Thank you for being very specific, everyone. This is super helpful. Okay, I'm going to give it another 30 seconds and then we're going to move on to our next question. Okay, this is an important one as well. Where do you see bottlenecks or choke points in waste movement? And what we mean by movement, the transport of waste via conveyance, either to or between waste facilities, as you described earlier. Like for those of you who mentioned all the way to Ohio, where are there bottlenecks? Where are there choke points in moving this waste? There's a chat comment. Most residential and commercial waste in my region is collected by private waste corporations. Fresh Pond Yard, that's a bottleneck, okay, or choke point. Thank you. New York City is a choke point, okay. For Connecticut, I-95 and I-84 are already massively congested. Adding the export of trash exceeds capacity of the highway system, endangering lives of drivers. Thank you. Traffic impacts collection and collection impacts traffic. Hunts Point, okay, thank you. Anyway, there's a comment here. Came in, recyclables should be baled by type, i.e. corrugated cardboard or number 2 plastics, and aggregated for efficiency before transportation. But generally they are collected all mixed together, single stream, and then transported as far as over 50 miles. And then we've got a comment here about long distance haulers on New York State Route 17. Yes, okay. Keep that feedback coming, please. Environmental justice communities that bear a disproportionate share of waste facilities and transport impacts. Yes, thank you. This is a huge issue. We appreciate you calling it out. MRF. So thank you for defining MRF, materials recovery facilities. Thank you for defining that. Okay, we'll give this another minute or two. Let people add more if they like. You can feel free to do more than one comment. If you have other things you just think of, feel free to add more. We're not limited by only being able to have one comment in the poll. Give another comment. With households hiring their own private waste haulers, there are many different trucks on a given street or road. Thank you. Okay, I think our poll has slowed down, so I'm going to, oh, here was another one. Organics that wind up in landfills and incinerators or co-digested with sewage instead of being composted and turned into soil. Thank you. This is great feedback. Thank you very much. Okay, we'll move on to the next question section. This is our fourth exercise. This is a thinking about the future. So we've already heard some great feedback, some ideas, like in terms of where we're citing facilities so that they're not in EJ communities. We've heard a suggestion about that. And so we would like to hear from you about what methods of waste movement are most important for the future when you're thinking about how things could be improved, what is most important for the future. Seeing some other chat questions here. There's a YouTube video, latest last week with John Oliver episode, deep dive into freight trains and the many issues around them. Thank you. Oh, looking forward to watching that. And then we have another comment here in the chat. Very important. We are contaminating food scraps by mixing them with sewage sludge, which is always contaminated with PFAs, forever chemicals, and a lot of other toxics. Thank you. Okay, and we've got one person's important movement, barge and rail, reduce packaging, including single-use plastic. All right, reduction. Thank you. Zero waste we have in the chat here. Greater weighting on transportation impact, more sorting and reduction at local levels, aggressive recycling. Okay, thank you. Keep organics out of the waste stream and reduce waste on trucks, rail, and barge by 41% coming out of New York City. Increase use of water modes. Thank you. Curbside containerization. More single source recycling, especially for commercial, and localized composting and actually compost food scraps. Thank you. Ban on transport of highly toxic, flammable, reactive chemicals or oils. We have another comment in the chat. My area includes a former GE capacitor factory where PCBs were dumped into the Hudson River. We have environmental justice areas and disadvantaged communities. Our area is almost entirely white. Thank you for the specific feedback. Thank you very much. Fully enclosed freight cars, so no spillage, reduce the distance traveled, local processing, recycled gypsum wallboard, keep out of landfills, reduce environmental impact of transportation. This is great feedback. Thank you. Another comment here. Response in the chat, EJ seems as much economic inequality as racial. Thank you. Include less fortunate neighborhood, I would think, in terms of feedback or providing input. Move less, recycle more. Keep toxics out of packaging. Reduce the source of waste, EPR. I'm sorry, I'm not sure what that stands for, but thank you. Give this another minute. We're getting some great feedback. Give something to communities affected by freight, air, noise pollution. Sponsor community gardens and compost sites, reduction measures. So a little give and take there, give something back to these communities. Oh, thank you. Extended producer responsibility. Appreciate that. Thank you. And then a response in the chat for about EPRs. EPRs holding manufacturers responsible for disposal costs. And then another comment that a year or two ago, a train transporting garbage was stuck for a while, maybe a week, in a town on railroad along the Hudson River, near probably Mechanicsville. That definitely would create some congestion. Big disruptions. Okay, we'll give it another 20 seconds. Another chat comment. We need outright bans on toxics in products. Thank you. All right, I'm going to go to the next question, which is, how can the movement of waste be improved? You guys have already gotten some great feedback. We'd like to hear more specifics if you have, how to improve.
I think, Stephanie, for this one, would ask everyone to think about the movement. Clearly, reduction in the waste stream is something that affects the movement, but let's talk only about the movement here. Give us your ideas about how waste should best be moved in the future.
Decarbonized transportation, truck onboard technologies for safety. Oh, truck side guards. Capacity for trucks on Connecticut roads. Making rail safer. There's an interesting chat comment and a link. Thank you. We will take a look at that about rail pollution protection in Pittsburgh. Thank you. Definitely read that. Railroads are still using locomotives made in the 1970s. Segmentation and reduction closer to the point of generation for more local solutions with less hauling. We have a couple more comments in the chat have come in. Waste should have to be separated prior to transport, no mixed waste. And then another comment, increase rail capacity in the Northeast. So, thank you very much for these chat comments. All right, we need viable, high capacity and high tech port near JFK to transfer waste from Brooklyn, Queens, Nassau. New York State adopt the California rail regulation recently approved by EPA. Thank you. These are really great ideas to improve movement of waste, increase and reuse, so less traffic. Another comment in the chat, we need to reduce the amount of waste transported, similar to the comment that just came through here in this poll. Comment about rail here. Rail provides the lowest cost per ton to move solid waste. Perhaps site transfer stations. Locate them near the rail. Thank you. Use NYC's blue highways. I'm going to give this another couple minutes. We're getting some excellent feedback. Thank you all very much. There's a lot of feedback on rail. It's excellent. Thank you. We actually received a lot of feedback on rail in our last meeting as well. Comment in the chat, in the UK and Ireland, recyclables and food waste are collected in electric vehicles with less than 10 compartments. I can provide name of company. It's an amazing system that reduces costs and increases recycling. Sure, please let us know the company. You put it in the chat and we will investigate. Thank you. This lowest cost per ton by rail is untrue, since railroads are using old locomotives and externalizing health and environmental costs for workers and residents. So perhaps the costs could be better if the locomotives were not from the 1970s. Got a interrelationship here with these two comments. More communication to the public. Okay. Could you elaborate a little, maybe in the chat or in the poll, what type about how the waste is moved? Is that the kind of communication that you're thinking about, or communication to the public about where the waste goes? Both. Okay, great. Thank you. So we're talking about communication of where waste goes and how it is moved. Thank you very much. All right, we'll give another 20 seconds here. Charge manufacturer for more for things that can't be transported easily. Okay, thank you. right, excellent. I'm going to move to the next question here. And that's it. Thank you so much for participating. Again, if you have any other thoughts, please put them in the chat throughout the remainder of our time here. And we all, again, this is being recorded, and we are also going to take all of these poll answers and chat questions and make sure that we review everything. And yeah, please email us the name of the UK Irish company. That would be great.
All right, thank you, Stephanie. So we don't want to push back too much if folks haven't had the chance to have dinner yet, but Stephanie, can you put an email into the chat?
Yes, I can just use my email. I'm going to put it.
But we do have a couple of minutes, and we can answer any questions either through the chat, or if you want to raise a hand, and I'll unmute you. Any questions about this beyond what we've already covered?
So I put my email in the chat. So if you have anything else that comes up, anything else you wanted to share, feel free to email me directly, and I'll make sure it gets to the team here. Well, we've got one more comment that just came in the chat. Plastic waste is being transformed into highly flammable, explosive, hazardous, carcinogenic chemicals, and then transported by rail along rivers and through densely populated cities. We need a robust Railway Safety Act. Thank you.
Okay, and we have a hand up from David Sabatini. David?
Yes, it's a question about annual reporting. Go ahead.
Hi, thank you for the opportunity to ask a question. This has been a great public session, so thank you. Each year at the transfer station that I supervise and run, we report annually to New York State DEC the generation, collection, transport, and disposal. So my question was, are the other participating counties in the other states not required to do that? Because you should have all the information you're looking for directly from the state agencies collecting it. It should be packaged nicely for you guys to examine.
So Tyler, I think that I would say that we are trying to discover that right now in terms of those types of sources and what the requirements are in the other states and the other counties. So
Yeah, David, I guess two things come to mind when I think of that is one, yes, we are definitely looking at that. Certain areas require it better than others. But also one of the bigger challenges too is just the amounts is only half of our battle there. We also have to think about from where it goes, how does it get there? And then is that the final destination? So all of what you're talking about, yes, we are actively looking, we're polling that date. We are aware that data is there. We're trying to compile that right now, and then also try to rectify or reconcile that with how it gets to that point in the first place. And, we're looking down to not even just by mode, but, what freight corridors are being used, what local level streets or local level interim spots are being there. So yeah, we're looking at what you're talking about at this point.
So thank you. We do have a hand from the Curious folks. I'm going to suggest you unmute.
Yes, thank you for doing this. Appreciate your doing it at this time of the evening. I just wanted to say, I hope that you'll reach out to Sandy Nurse, council member, and the head of the sanitation committee for the New York City Council. There was an 11-hour hearing this week, and community composting came up a lot. When there several times there's this idea that's come up tonight about low cost, like rail having like the lowest cost per ton or whatever. And I think, I hope that this study will think about costs more comprehensively than they've been thought about in the past, because the cost in terms of health, climate, local environment for communities, they're the ones that are the costs that are being externalized by the waste industry and by transporters, by operators of waste facilities, landfills, and burners. And communities are left with those costs long-term at the disposition facilities. And they're experiencing them daily at the sites where waste is being processed and transported, and those costs are not being counted. So the only way you could say that what we're doing now is like the most efficient, or, you know, whatever, as Stephanie said, you know, if you're using a 1970s locomotive that's putting out the pollution of 30,000 cars, you know, there's a cost to that, but it's not being counted. So I hope that we can count on NYMTC and its consultants to really take that into account now. Thank you.
Thank you. It's, I mean, externalities and external effects are really important. And, you know, we agree that we have to find a way to accommodate them in this effort. Next hand up is Nicole Jean. Nicole?
Hi, Nicole Jean Christian from Brookhaven NAACP. I actually had another meeting, so I missed the first part, but there are two members that are here from the NAACP, Josh Batson and Marvin Colson. I didn't know, just a point of clarification, Madam and Sir Chair, is this an opportunity for us to share just 10 seconds or less our thoughts about this regional waste management study? Where are we in the discussion? Are we wrapping up now, or I want to make sure I'm in order?
Well, we've done the interactive session, so the
Okay.
structured part of it is over, but, you know, whatever you feel like you want to add to that, go for it.
Yeah, I can also send to Miss Stephanie. I think Miss Brooks said that we can also email her. So I think the NAACP, the Brookhaven Town chapter, and also the NAACP State Conference, if I may speak at that level, we are really concerned about the Surface Transportation Board being used as an end run by waste facilities to site waste facilities in communities of color. So, you know, we really feel like STP, DEC, and all the state agencies should be petitioning for the Surface Transportation Board to stay out of siting waste facilities, particularly in communities of color. We also support home rule and being petitioned, Surface Transportation Board being petitioned to somehow oversee or neutralize local home rule is quite concerning. So those are two really important elements for us, is that these are not railway projects. These are waste facility siting projects. They're not railroad surface transportation projects. The main core and the purpose of these projects is to move waste. So we really feel like STB should, you know, be out of that business, or if they are, we should definitely be uplifting home rule. And also, if there is a waste management company or a company looking to get or to petition the Surface Transportation Board to overrun home rule or to go around home rule with this because of this issue of a waste crisis, we'd like to see that there were alternative options considered. You know, were white communities studied as a home or a nesting location, or is it always the overburdened, underserved, and vulnerable populations? The community of Brookhaven has borne its fair share of waste facilities, from our landfill to the industrial complex that we have, to the trucks on the road. We have the highest, one of the lowest life expectancy rates in Bellport because of the air quality. So we are just concerned. We're here, and we are absolutely a partner in a solution, but the solution needs to be transparent and honest. And so that's our three-part concern, and we do hope we hear from you. And if you have any more questions, we're absolutely here to talk about and to bring about a solution. Thank you so much.
And that's great. And we're glad you're here with us tonight. That's one of the reasons why we're reaching out And again, this is, we're looking not only at Long Island or even the New York City part of the region, but over a broad area. And
Yeah.
I'm sure there are issues like the ones you're describing in other parts of our region. So thank you for bringing that up. It is an important part of what we're looking at.
Yeah, the home rule issue, number one. Number two is the siting of waste facilities in communities of color.
Mhm.
And number three is the alternative site consideration. That's really our three parts, Jerry. And thank you. And I want to uplift and amplify. Thank you to Cures, the Civics United for Railroad Solutions. We want to thank them for keeping the NAACP in the loop. Cures has been very actively engaged as a partner and a thought leader in this space. So I just want to amplify and thank them for making sure we got the information for tonight's meeting. Thank you again for the invitation.
And thank you from here to Cures too for spreading the word. Very important. Tyler, I think, one thing to note from this, and we certainly heard this in the New York portion of the region, is that, the STB, Surface Transportation Board role is subtle, but there in this whole question. So when we're looking at the various regulatory landscapes and so forth, we really have to keep STB in mind also.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And Nicole, I just, since you weren't here earlier, I just want to point out we are launching a survey outreach program in the near future that I would just encourage you to keep an eye out for. And we'll be looking for interested stakeholders who are willing to provide whatever information we have. So that way, I mentioned, we can really bring in a holistic understanding of what all the different viewpoints are out there. So we can really identify opportunities, recommendations, as well as areas of concern.
Right. So this workshop isn't the only avenue for sure. But thanks for being with us. Let's see. Stephanie, do you see any other questions in the chat pod? I don't.
Some good links about the cost impact of climate change on rail infrastructure and also sustainable management, food waste, food scale.
Mhm.
And then from Mr. Sabatino for more opportunities to help. But no questions thus far. Oh,
Yeah.
there's another comment just came through. NYMTC and Rutgers should be using the EPA wasted food scale in the analysis about externalizing costs. And that's in the chat, the link. And then there was one more comment. I do not think the impacted community near the largest landfill in the state at the Seneca Meadows, which receives New York City waste, is represented here. Thank you.
Okay. So that's fine. We
One
wanted
last
to, at
point.
the end of the
Yeah.
structured input, we wanted to give everyone an opportunity to ask any questions that they had. If there are no more questions, that's perfectly fine. You've given us a real education tonight, and that's the whole purpose of these workshops. You know better than we what the local conditions are that are affecting you, and in many cases, you know more about the regional conditions than we do also. So this is very, very important to us, and we really appreciate not only your time, but the information that you have. We're struck by how much information people have about issues related to waste. It's a really important issue to a lot of people. I did want to, just in closing, ask my boss. Oh, wait a minute, hold it. Nicole, did you
We
have
have one
something
more
else?
question from Nicole Jean. She raised her hand again.
I forgot to add the last part, which is we really support the actual stoppage of siting waste facilities in environmental justice communities, period. So I just wanted to add that, Jerry and Stephanie, we really think that the state has to look at the totality and intersectionality and multi-layering of impact. So we really recommend and highly support just the stoppage of siting these facilities in environmental justice communities, period, whether it's cheaper, smarter, easier, whatever the reasoning and the logic is, we really think that we should bar EJ communities from being host to any more waste facilities.
Thank you.
Here,
Thank
here.
you very much.
Thank you.
Understood. Understood. All right. So is there any other question out there?
Mr. Olkhurst, you had your hand up?
Yeah, couple of comments. A lot of your waste, as we just discussed, is going by rail. The statistics in all of Pennsylvania show that 57% of our entire state population lives within both the black carbon diesel emissions pollution fallout zone and the derailment blast zone. And that percentage is even higher in the states that you're studying. We have studies that show that for every 100 trains, there are 10 pollution-related deaths a year. Every 100 trains is the equivalent of 6,800 diesel buses going past your doorstep every day. Every hour that a train idles, there's one pollution-related death a year. The problem is that you're transporting all of this waste on a rail system that is fragile. These class 1 railroads are for profit, and they've postponed maintenance, and their lines of 50% of all the rail lines go through environmental justice areas because they were built to connect to the stationary pollution sources, which were located in environmental justice areas. And, these plastic to chemical facilities are the next East Palestine. And the one that I linked in the chart is in Sina. It's taking 450,000 tons of plastic waste, most of it from New York. It's being transported by Norfolk Southern down the entire Susquehanna. Those rail lines were built on top of old canals. That's not meant to be a high volume rail line. Those facilities that are trying to recycle the waste are using powered by trains bringing up volatile oil. And there's 6 million people who draw their water from the Susquehanna, their drinking water from the Susquehanna, which empties into the Chesapeake Bay. And so you think you're getting rid of your waste in an efficient way by rail, and you're putting it into facilities that are being built on floodplain. The rail lines are in the floodplain. Their water drainage systems along the rail lines are antiquated, and they're overwhelmed by either flooding or record rainfall, which super saturates the soil under the ballast, and you're going to have a derailment of hazardous chemicals, benzene, and 4 other chemicals that will be spread far and wide, just like East Palestine, over a swath of 2 states. And if that kind of derailment of these plastic chemicals from your waste occurs in that geographic locale along the East Coast, you're going to have nothing short of an apocalyptic derailment. And that's not hyperbole. And so you have to take that into account in terms of your costs. You've got rail pollution and safety problems, and that's what you're trusting your waste in, and it's going to affect lots of people, and that's all linked.
Yes, it is. And actually, you're hearkening back to the previous comment on external impacts and how to accommodate them, and not only accommodate them, but account for them in assessing the different options. It's very complicated, but it's something that we have to be aware of. So thank you for pointing that out.
Yeah, those studies of climate change impact on the infrastructure are also cited for Pennsylvania, but they don't include the rail, the bridges and the rail tracks. And if that's how you're transporting your waste, there is a big problem going forward. We all know that there were 3 derailments a day after East Palestine, and Norfolk Southern, which carries a lot of your waste, they have one derailment every 7 days. And so there's a huge risk here, especially to environmental justice communities and to the drinking water and the air in those major population centers.
Thank you for pointing that out. We have that information. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any last questions before we close? Again, thank you for the education you've given us tonight. We really, really appreciate that. And I want to want to ask Adam Levine if he has anything to say to close the affair.
I just want to echo what you were saying, Jerry. I mean, I'm trying to keep up with the comments, and they are so expert in their knowledge of this this topic. It's going to be a big help for our study. So thank you again to everyone who joined us tonight and shared your expertise. It's very much appreciated.
And for those of you who haven't eaten yet, enjoy your dinner. Thanks,
Oh,
everyone.
Thank you for
Holidays
putting
as
the
well.
contact in, Ms. Jean. Thank you.
Have a good evening, folks.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Good night. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.